So that's the tricky part is you can have success in that space and still nobody know who you are. And so you have to it's this balance of getting ears to hear the song and to like it, but then to also connect to you as an artist.
This podcast is produced by Amplitude Ventures, your partner in co-building early-stage startups into fundable, thriving ventures.
If you've ever wondered what it actually takes to turn talent into a lasting career, this conversation is for you. Jenna LoMonaco, head of US marketing at 1RPM, has spent over 20 years shaping the music industry, helping launch artists like Shawn Mendes. The topic? How artists today can balance authenticity in a world of algorithms and noise. Hey guys, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I have a huge honor of interviewing Jenna LoMonaco on the podcast. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. It's been so good speaking to you for the last 10 minutes. And as I said at the very beginning, my head is very much at digital marketing right now. Like at Amplitude, we're setting this up more and more in our team. And looking through your CV, when we had the opportunity to get you on the podcast, I'm like, okay, this is a woman that I want to talk with. And you've had some amazing experiences and breakthrough artists in your career. But Jenna, before we get into that, for the people who don't know who you are, who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Jenna LoMonaco. I am the head of US marketing here at 1RPM. And I've been working in the music industry for over 20 years now.
Amazing. And it's not just any career you've had. You've been a part of breaking careers like Shawn Mendes and big acts like Elton John and Nick Jonas and the whole thing. And as I said to you also at the beginning of our casual conversation, is like I've never really been able to figure out what it takes to break an artist. I've worked with artists to no degree like you, but had participation in small indie labels, and I've never really cracked the code. So what I would love to understand today is like, how do you actually think about marketing for artists? How do you think about marketing for music? Because
Right.
I know the concepts, but it just
Mhm.
feels like it is so difficult to create that successful campaign. And
To
I would assume it also changes all the time what constitutes a good digital marketing campaign.
Right. Well, and I'm never gonna sit and claim that I have the it all figured out, right? But I think that there are certain elements to it that always stay the same, and there are certain elements that change and have many things have changed over the past 20 years that I've worked in music. So I think that the essence of it is always connecting with your fans and creating a real long-lasting relationship with those fans where they see you as an artist and not as a song or
Mhm.
a few songs, right? Like you want a real genuine connection with your fans. And the way that you execute that has varied many different ways over the years, right? So when I first started working in music, it was MySpace. And we've come quite a long way from that. Um, and so I think there's been many different eras of how you could find those fans, but the key is really being able to locate where your fans live, who they are, and trying to figure out how you build that special relationship with them.
Mm. And me, from a naive standpoint, I think it's a really interesting starting point you have when we talk about how to do this. You don't really talk about the actual marketing. You talk about the underlying features that you want to, I guess, sort of grow and expose. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
how essential is that to actually have a successful marketing campaign, like having these underlying relationships that you build upon?
I think very important. And I think that when we're looking at working with an artist, you need to have goals and like what are those 10 poles that you want to hit. And I think, in any marketing campaign, there are those things where, you want to get a feature with this outlet, or you want to do a session with this channel, you want this magazine to write about you, which not so much anymore, but this press coverage, you want this kind of tour, right? But it's more about the pathway that you need to take to get to those things, right? Because you don't just there are artists that are like, "Oh, well, I wanna book late night." Like, that's great, that's a great goal. So what is the road to get there, right? And so I think that you have those tentpole things that you want to achieve, but you don't just do that, you have to have a roadmap there. And so I think that being able to have, the real conversation about what are the things that get you to those points? That's
Mm,
the stuff that I think people forget about, is that build up, the ladder, and the steps that you have to take to get to those places.
mm.
And that's why oh, sorry, go
No,
on.
all good. Like, maybe, one thing that could be really interesting for me to understand, like, from a practical angle, also knowing that, I don't really know how to do this as of yet, and I hope to understand it more in the future is, for example, your journey with Shawn Mendes. As far as I understood, like, he sort of came into to your work life when he was 15 and basically was a talent. Like, when you have something so raw, like, what do you look at? Like, what are the personality traits, or what are the his past that you look at to build something around? Like, if you maybe you could dissect an example like that. How do you go about thinking about this?
So, I mean, with Sean, I think that that was an interesting one because the reason why he started to get so much attention is because he had such a rabid fan base, right? So I think that everything that we did was very circled and focused around the fans and how did we get them involved with everything that we were doing, right? So everything that we tried to achieve for Sean was very focused on how to get the fans to be a big part of that because he had a very rabid fan base that wanted a piece of that, right? Like they wanted to help him to get to that success level. That is a really fun case in marketing, but not every artist has
Mm,
a fan base like that, right? So it's a little bit hard to use that as like a baseline
okay.
because not every artist has a rabid fan base the way that he had.
So, are we getting back to the thing about marketing? To be effective, you need to have something first. Like, is there actually a case for building something up from scratch, like, in general? Which is, a lot of the efforts that I've tried.
Right. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think that in today's world, it takes a lot more effort from the artist than it ever did in the past, right? And the unfortunate truth is that artists really need to be content creators too. And
Yeah.
the way that you do that and the way that you execute that it shouldn't be the same, right? It needs to be very true to you and who you are as an artist. And no one should, I don't believe in the label pressuring an artist that you have to make a bunch of TikToks, right? That's if you, just to pump out a bunch of TikToks isn't going to solve the problem that you have. What you need to figure out is what is it about you and your story that people could connect with, right? So part of it is how do you get your music to people? How are you but getting your music to be something that is familiar and interesting to people, but then also what else is your story, right? Because the other trick with short form video platforms is it's very easy to, again, just be a song, right? Just a song that's in a bunch of videos on a trend. And then nobody really cares about you as the artist. So that's the
Mhm.
tricky part is you can have success in that space and still nobody know who you are. And so you
Yeah.
have to it's this balance of getting ears to hear the song and to like it, but then to also connect to you as an artist.
Mhm. Like, one of the big contemplations I have when it comes to artistry in general is sort of obviously the content creator part of it, but also, like, the business savviness and understanding trends and stuff. In your experience, how big a part of this is natural for, like, the usual successful cases? Is that something they inherently understand as an artist? Or is that something they train? Is it a team that sort of applies it?
I think that the artists that get that they have to put in the work, like, that's the biggest thing, right?
Okay, sure.
Because, look, you do get a lot of artists that are like, "Well, I don't wanna do that."
Yep.
And the way that I kind of see it is like, well, I hate doing email, but, like, I have to. It's part of my job, right? And so, like I said, the truth is that, like, you have to market yourself, and the way that you market yourself is utilizing these platforms. Now, that doesn't mean I do not believe that, like, TikTok is the end all be all answer, right? Like, YouTube, I think, is a wildly underrated platform in terms of, like, how, much success you can have. I mean, obviously, that's how Shawn Mendes broke was from
Mm,
was for YouTube, right? But, um I think sometimes people forget how valuable that platform is.
mm,
And I think you have fans that live on all of these different platforms. So how are you engaging with all of them in a way that they want to be engaged with?
mm. So, a person like you that's had such a interesting career and now have such a big position in marketing, what are the things that you believe that you have, the eye you have, the knowledge you have that you can repeat and utilize in these cases over and over that makes you able to do that? Like, what are the things you see that other people don't see?
Well, I think part of it comes with experience, like anything else, right? I think that you need to be a true music lover. I
Mm,
think that's really what it comes down to is understanding the mind of the fan, right? Um, that is something that I think is really interesting over, like, the past, I would say, like, maybe 5 to 10 years, is there are a lot of super fans that have ended up working in music, like, where they were, like, super fans who ran an artist's Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and then they ended up working on marketing teams at record labels. I think it's because they have a deep understanding of how the fan's mind works. I think it's really important to never forget why it is that we do this. I had a conversation with someone recently where we talked about how things are more algorithmic based right now.
yeah.
And there is a scientific, analytical, data-based element to everything that we do. And I think that's very important, and I will never discount that, and that's vital to finding your fans, and those are tools that we were lucky enough to have. But you have to understand the emotional part of it, right? And how do you, um, channel your inner 15-year-old that just loved an artist and, like, wanted to know more about that artist that you love, right? I think it might sound, I don't know, cliche or whatever, but really never losing the music fan inside of you, and then just the experience that you get over the years, I think that's the combination that I try to focus on.
Mm. Reflecting my own path, I think that's maybe one of the things that I do wrong is I tend to intellectualize the approach, a bit
Mm,
too much maybe, like, trying to say, "Okay, like, how do you go about this? Like, what are the how do you need to be present? How do you need to act? How do you need to sort of, um, uh, set yourself in a specific trend?" And I think for me, that's where my mind goes, and sort of where you also talking about now is, like, um, what's the emotional aspect? What is the strong things you want to build on? Like, what do you assume that people resonate with and you want to lean into?
mhm.
Uh, and, like, is there a packaging that does that? Or does it only work on top of existing, let's call it charisma, or zeitgeist, or whatever that asset has?
Well, I think it's a matter of having a really good team too, right? Because it's impossible to expect for an artist to be able to spend hours and hours and hours doing research of like what weird subculture of of the internet is really, connecting with your music. But oftentimes things will trend in places that you didn't expect. And it's like, okay, so how do we know we have this audience, maybe it's an audience base that loves nature and they love to go on hikes. And they're, doing lots of content just about like adventure and travel and things like that. maybe that's not the thing that you immediately thought of when you wanted to start marketing your music, but now you see you have this fan base of people that are really into that. So now it's like, okay, how are we going to tap into that? How are we going to connect with those people? How could I make content to show that part of my life that I also love those things? Um, you know, that's where the research and the data mixes with the emotion of like, okay, this is something that actually I really love, and these people have very naturally grabbed onto this. How do we can make a connection between those two things? Maybe this is a really good chance for me to go through my phone and share all these photos I've taken on tour. Or maybe I've always dreamed of buying a camera and taking photos of, my adventures. And now this is something that I know that my fans would really love. And so it's kind of like putting together the research with that part of yourself that you wanna share.
Hmm. Sometimes it helps for me to sort of ask people to generalize stuff, and I know that's a hard thing to do. But if you were to say, how big of your job would be proactive versus reactive in marketing analysis?
I would say 50-50, right?
Okay.
Because you have to always be ready to be reactive to things. Um, I I I get frustrated when there because when there's moments that people don't act on, right? Because there are certain key moments in this industry that like you really only get one shot at, and if you don't act on it the right way, you lose it, right? Like you can't. That's magic in a bottle, and you get that moment, and you're trending or a big celebrity or influencer, organically uses your music or you get a sync placement or, whatever it is, you have to make sure that you're really using that to your fullest advantage. So I think a really good example of that is many, many years ago when I was working with Mumford and Sons. The Grammys launched the feature, I guess you would call it, on the Grammys where they honor a musician. And so, they were honoring Bob Dylan, at that year, and Mumford& and Sons did a cover on the Grammys. They weren't nominated yet. All they didn't have their own performance. They were just doing a cover of a Dylan song, and their performance was so amazing that it got some of the biggest attention more than people that were nominated or won, right? So we were like, "Okay, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna make sure people know that their album is out? How are people gonna know that this is them and this is where you can buy their music and this is where you can follow them?" And we really worked to activate that moment because it was one of those things where you could have just said, "That was cool." And not to and just sat on it, and then that would have been a wasted opportunity. So you have to be ready to be reactive at any moment, and whatever opportunities you get, whatever spark you get, you have to be ready to activate on it. But being proactive is wildly important because you don't get to those moments without being proactive and, introducing an artist to people, or, you know, just like basic setup work,
Mm.
So I definitely think it's a 50-50.
Is the proactivity to some degree the pursuit of the reaction you need to take? Like you push something in order to get that spark that then can
Yeah,
ignite.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, wow, that's really interesting. And so how big a part of that is in the daily conversation? Like, okay, we're trying this, and whenever something happens, we jump on it. Like when we see like this has given something. Like,
I think it's one of those things like I don't know if this is a bad example, but like you're on a road trip and you need to drive. You're driving to from California to New York and you know that this is the path that you need to take. But then as you're driving, you see a road map, a sign that says like I don't know, some cool roadside attraction that you would never in your life get to see. And you're like, you know what? We're going to pivot and we're going to go do this thing. Right. I kind of see it in the same situation of like, you have your tent poles of like, these are the things that we want to achieve. These are the steps that we're going to take to try to get there. But as you're doing those things, something really cool happens in the midst of it. And how do you use that surprise thing that happens to kind of jump the ladder a little bit and make things go a little bit quicker, accelerate a little bit more.
Hmm. It's really interesting. I remember a few years ago, especially when TikTok was sort of really blossoming in music. I'm gonna say like maybe 4 years ago or so, like what really took place. And one of the things I heard a lot from professionals or like amateurs alike was, "Oh, no longer need a team to be discovered because we have these discovery platforms." Um, I personally, I feel like the space is now so crowded again, like, intention is back to king. There's not so much this happenstance, like, randomness, like, you actually need to have intent. What's your own sort of understanding of that whole, development, in, for example, platforms like TikTok?
Right. Well, in terms of like whether artists need a team or not.
Well, no, not so much that, more like, intent versus happenstance. Um,
Well, so I think that there was a moment of just happenstance, right? But then you have to know what to do with it, right?
yeah.
So, if you ever see, sometimes they do these like highlight reels on TikTok of like songs that were like a piece of COVID, right? Like those songs that were just like, that's all you heard during COVID, especially on TikTok, because that's where we spent our whole lives during lockdown. How many of those artists are still around, and what success did they really have from it,
Yeah.
right? So I think, like, again, it comes back to when a real one of those special moments come along, how do you react to it? And I think it's the same thing in that a song can go viral at any moment, and they do every day, but it's a matter of how you utilize that situation. Are you going to be a moment where you're like, "Oh, yeah, remember that song?" Or are you gonna be like, "Oh, and that's how this artist got their start," right? And I think that's when it comes into play of, like, why you need a team of people that can help you with that,
Yeah.
um, to know what to do with that moment because you need a level of expertise to know how you really build upon a situation like that. It's rare, it's special, but when you have it, you have to know what to do with it. It's the same thing even, sorry, getting a hit, right? You can have one hit, but you need a team who's gonna know what to do to keep those hits going for you to not be a one-hit wonder.
It's really interesting. I haven't really thought about reality that way, that, you know that if you hit it, having people who knows how to sustain it or, do it again or, build a momentum is quite key. And I was even today, I was actually going through TikTok. I really love that platform. And there was this new Norwegian song with an artist called Oscar Milko, which is like a new house, like deep, something like a really cool track that's going viral with dances. And it's actually really, really freaking good music. And I was just looking through his profile. This song has been out for a few weeks, maybe a month, and it's really taking off. And I just look at his profile like this guy is gonna be stuck with that song alone because like it's very clear like even though he's making content every single day, like I don't really see this going anywhere on his side. It's the song just sort
Mhm,
of taking off without him. But then
mhm,
you've seen situations with like now I might be butchering names. Is it Jake, the piano player that was playing in
mhm.
front of his, like the way that whole thing took off and he just leaned into it, that became a sensation, not just the song, but he became a sensation. Like, there's so big differences in, like, how you pursue these things.
Yes.
And what I was really surprised with his breakthrough was, like, it just seems so well thought out because it wasn't like surprise and then like, okay, that was a hit. Like you just lean into it naturally. Like,
Mhm.
do you believe like these situations where some people are really good at bringing teams on really fast and say, okay, I need some help in order to sort of build this up. Is that what often happens, or is like these lone artists that sort of figure that out themselves?
I mean, it's always different. Some of these artists are really, really smart and do the research to know, like, this is what I need to do, and I do think that there are some people that just have, like, natural, skill at social media and really know what to do, but I think, like you said, like, knowing when you need to bring in a team and what that team is that you need to bring in, right? Because you don't also need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a million different people to be a part of your team. when right now maybe only you just need a really great digital team, right? Like, you don't need to bring on PR and radio and everything else. Take it one thing at a time. Um, so yeah, I think like knowing when you need help and knowing that it's okay to ask for help and find and there's so many great teams out there that can jump in at that moment. I can being smart enough to know what you can handle and what you need help with.
Mm. One of the big sort of barriers for digital marketing, especially music, in my opinion, is usually if you pick up, let's call it advertising for whatever you do, being a restaurant or anything, like you have a product you sell that sort of you can see sort of like, okay, I spend this much money, I sell this much. But music, when it comes to marketing, if it's paid ads or just effort, like it's much harder metric to measure because you basically working for engagement and like the sale is the secondary nature. And oftentimes, if the sale, let's say, is a stream, like is negligible, like it doesn't really convert to anything of size. Like, how do you navigate that as like a musical artist that whatever you do doesn't really lead to a direct sale of anything of monetary value most of the cases, unless you can scale it up?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, that's kind of, like, the frustrating thing about where we are. That's what makes it so difficult is it's not just you're gonna do this one thing and you're gonna get paid for it. It's doing many actions every day that are going to lead to monetary value, and I mean, listen, like, with streaming, it's the same thing, right? Like, you don't just need somebody to buy a CD once anymore, right? You need a fan who's going to listen to it over and over and over again, right? So, what are those different tactics that you're using to get people to listen to it over and over again, right? Like, there's different listening parties and fan engagement campaigns and asking your fans to share and get their other friends to listen to save the song to their library to pre-save. You need that repetitiveness. It's not You're not asking somebody to just listen to it once. You want somebody to listen to it over and over and over again. And so that has to be part of what it is that you're thinking about is like the repetitiveness of what you basically need people to do in order to have, like, real success.
And I think for me, the key problem to understanding is exactly that. Is just like the output is different than what you would do for traditional marketing. Like there is no product in the traditional sense. It needs to be this continuous relationship of consumption, which is to some degree is very unique for music. I like there's not many other than maybe creator economy itself, of course, but
Yeah.
it's quite unique, I would say.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that it's a unique situation because I can't think of another, situation where you need somebody to keep going back and back and back into your repertoire, right? So, I would definitely agree with that.
Mm. And that also goes back to the difficulty, like, financing these things because, one of the reasons, of course, why labels have existed for a long time is that they have a financing element, they have a patience element, they also have a risk element. Like,
Mhm.
one artist has one career, one label has dozens of artists, so the risk can be spread out.
Mhm.
But I think also my assumption with digital marketing in this space or marketing in general is just like uh, the risk that you need to take is significantly high, and the return of investment is very questionable. So
Mhm.
people who can actually afford that, either like through monetary means or energy or partnerships, is
Mhm.
limited. Um, which for me, I'm a big believer in teams in particularly this space. Um, Maybe we could dissect a bit, really to understand like how a team would work. Like at one RPM, like you guys are global company, you have many, many offices. Like what do you actually do? Like what's your activities in marketing for artists?
Sure. So, okay. So we have a number of different services that we offer in house, right? So we have your project managers who are basically your coordinators and your key mastermind of who is going to run your campaign and who's your trusted person on the team, right? So you have your project managers, and then we have our digital strategy team that works with you to say, okay, this is what's working on your socials. This isn't what's not working. Here are different ways that we can help you grow your followers, your engagement, different fan activations. They're constantly trying to find new ways to discover where your fans are, where they might be, how are we going to be creative in the way that we market to them. We have our advertising team, influencer marketing. We have a YouTube team who does optimization and also YouTube growth strategy. We have sync marketing, um, and then we also hire out for certain services. So radio, PR, that sort of stuff we hire out. I just think that there's especially with PR, I think it's a very personalized thing. And with radio, not everybody wants to go to radio, not everybody
Mhm.
needs to go to radio, and that is one of those spends that you have to be really particular about, because you could blow a lot of money really quickly too
Mm,
soon.
mm. And when you dissect it that way, it makes sense. Like I recognize that these are all activities that should and could be pursued, especially if you want to reach at scale.
Right,
Um,
and so yeah, so, like, the really cool thing about the way that we're structured is so our deals are very, different than your standard label deal, right? And so what we do everything based on splits and licensing periods and things like that. And so you can come to us and say, oh, and I forgot to mention our DSP department, which is very important. So you can come to us and say, like, we really just need help with like DSPs and advertising and influencer marketing. And
yeah.
like those are the services you use. Your splits are based on that. Some artists are like, we want the whole team. We want you guys to be our team, fully invested. But it can be a la carte or it could be the full team because again, we live in a world where like some artists are more business savvy than others. Some artists are really good at social media. They don't need our help. Some artists, they just want our social help and social strategy. So we really try to be as flexible as we can for our artists to make sure we're being what they need
Mm.
us to be for them.
And is that a particular size of artist you sort of have preference for? Like, how do people approach you?
Our A&R team works to have those conversations. They through different connections, just managers talking with us. Sometimes it's like finding stuff online, and one of us really likes it and sends it to A&R. So we kind of discover artists all different sorts of ways, and sometimes just in person going to a show, the
Yeah.
old school way of seeing an artist on tour.
Yeah. For me, like sounds like a really interesting model, and even though, like, that's obviously, that how a lot of things work, I think
Mhm.
that there's been a lot of change the last few years, at least the last 5 to 10 years, and, like, how major labels work and the dynamics of financing versus teams and stuff, and if you were to sort of talk about the differentiation between you and major label services in a more traditional sense that we know now, like, where would you place yourself in that context?
I think we have the same level of services. Again, they have PR and radio in-house and we don't. But I think that the services that we offer otherwise are on par. And we can execute at the same level that they can. I think it's just a matter of the manner in which you want your team to be involved, right? So a lot of our artists are very, very involved. They're on our calls. They're part of the strategy. They're talking about numbers. They know their budgets. They really want to be a part of it. And I think that we offer a level of transparency and flexibility to artists that like a more traditional um, platform, a more traditional company, it just doesn't have that level of transparency.
Mm. No, it makes sense, and I think, there's just a lot of interesting things happen, not only in sentiment in the industry, but also positioning, market dynamics, protectiveness of market share, and, like, profitability and firings, and, you know, I work with several music companies where I also know, like, in the majors, there has been a lot of like changes in structures of employment. So it's really interesting to follow the dynamics of the markets now, where things are changing. Um, so one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, I've also had a few talks in the podcast, is branding. And also branding when it comes to the contrast of AI, because I think all listeners here could agree that social media is getting flooded. Uh,
Uh-huh.
uh, all channels of interaction digitally is just noisy. And therefore, the assumption that I hear from a lot of people on the show who also like works with us is the brand aspect, how recognizable you are, how you can stand out and stick to that brand is becoming increasingly important to break out.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
what's your sense of this change in the market when it comes to noise and branding and standing out? Like, is that becoming such a bigger focus than before, or has it always been big?
I think it's always been a big focus. I think it's really important for an artist to have a brand's identity that's wrapped into everything that you do for each album, right? And so whether it's your styling, the visuals that you create, the types of campaigns that you run, the way that you're interacting on your socials, I think that also makes it fun for the artists too, right? Is like I'm in this zone for this album. Um, but I think you have to people feed off of, repetitiveness, right? And that constant, um the reliability of, like, this is what this looks like, this is the feeling of this, right? I think that's really important, but I think it's always been important, it just changes in the way that you execute it.
Hmm. I think the repetitiveness is something that I am starting to learn. So, as an entrepreneur, and also, um, been diagnosed late in my life with ADHD. Like one of the things that I have really struggled with is consistency over time, and also,
Mhm.
I've failed to understand the importance of it. And I think this podcast is maybe a pretty good example. Like we've done around 130 episodes, and we've never skipped a week since we started, which is 2 years ago, I think, last
Wow.
week. And when I'm talking with my business partner, Taj, he's from India. He's much smarter than me, and basically, he's a bit funny once in a while and says, "Jacob, just stick to things. Like you always skip from things to things. Like you stuck to one thing, which is the podcast. Now it's big. Like just learn the lesson." And I think
Mhm.
for me, that's such a challenging mindset because I'm very much like an artist, like this very exploratory nature, expressing
Mhm.
myself. And I am always sort of drawn to the novel experience, like this new things, chasing all these things, and what I've just come to realize, even though I believe I have a strength of hitting new trends, like for example, the podcast
Mhm.
here, we're the first podcast in the world to have a live AI avatar interview with myself, like covered by
Mhm.
international media. And I was like, okay, I need to lean more into this, and I just realized, no, 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 just do the podcast. Like, don't do all the fancy stuff. And that's the continuity that has made this podcast in my very little niche space very, very large, and that's the only thing. Like,
Mhm.
it's just, obviously some quality and some presence digitally, but it's just been continuity, and I oftentimes forget the importance of that. And that's, I guess, what you're speaking into, like, just be there.
Yeah, I think that there's a level of comfort that comes with people knowing what to expect. Like, I read this article once about how, we all have that one TV show that you've seen over and over and over again, but you still always watch it. You don't understand why. And it's because you know that you're going to put it on and you're not going to be stressed out. Nothing's going to happen that's
Mm,
going to stress you out or that's going to be unexpected. You just know that you're going to watch it and you're going to laugh and it's going to be fine, right? I think that there's something to be said for that musically even, where, like, fans know that they're gonna listen to this artist and they're going to be able to get their anger out. They're gonna listen
mhm,
to this one album and they're really angry and they're gonna be able to listen to that and know that they're gonna be able to get that emotion out. Or there's an album that they love by their favorite artist that, like, it's really sad and it's gonna be comfort to them. And so I think that it's the same kind of concept of kind of giving people this level of like what to expect and staying true to that. That doesn't mean you always have to do the same thing, but staying true to that. And every now and then you can mix it up and see like what happens and kind of like A/B test kind of like what kind of content you're making even. But I think that there is a level of comfort that comes with um people knowing what to anticipate, what to expect, and also that becomes part of their identity too. Like, think about
Mm.
when you were a teenager and you loved your favorite artist, and that was like kind of you took on that personality. I was a Nemo kid. Like, that was like a big piece of like who you were. You were gonna go to the shows and see the same kids and the type of music, and that you're gonna be able to get your angst out. And so I think that it all comes back down to, like, people feeling like they know what's to come and the place where they belong, and so that repetitiveness and I will say, as someone who listens to podcasts a lot, I want to know when I'm turning on a podcast, like, what to expect, you know?
Oh, 100%. Like, again, I do it myself. Like, I follow the podcast, and I choose particular shows given what mood I want to be in, and the good
Mhm.
hosts, like, can introduce that over and over again. And I definitely appreciate that, and I think for me, that's actually a really good analogy. Um, but but where does the sort of creative expression and freedom come in that? Like, how do you balance that? Like, a lot of the artist friends I know, like, they're very much about this a personal realization where, to some degree, it's very much an egotistic pursuit, which obviously a lot of art comes from. But like, how do you balance that need for novelty and then the sensibility of consistency?
Right. Well, I mean, that's up for the artist to decide the novelty part of it, like where they want to go for each phase of their career. And I think that's something that's really cool about music too, right? Is that you can enter these different phases of your career. I mean, no one does that better than Taylor Swift,
Mm,
right? Like
mm.
her different eras and like the way that she's remade herself over and over and over again. I think every artist can do that. I mean, not at a level that she does, but like every artist, you have your different album. Your album's gonna sound a little bit different, it's gonna look a little different, your branding's gonna be a little bit different, maybe the content that you're creating, the conversations that you're having with your fans, the way that you're engaging with them. It's these, like, little pods, and you get to reinvent yourself over and over and over again, and
Mm,
I think that that creates this new level of like, a constant level of creativity for the artist.
mm.
And I love working campaigns like that where the artist really embraces those different kind of levels and worlds for each album. I think that's really exciting.
But I would also assume that those artists have sort of crossed some sort of boundary of um, fandom for the music and universe, and then fandom to the actual person, I guess, to some
Mhm.
degree. Like, what happens in that intersection where it's no longer just about, these are the songs and the vibes I loved, but this is the person I adore. Like,
Mhm.
what is the difference there?
In terms of what? That's an
How
interesting
does
question. I
okay, how
wanna
does an artist cross into that? Like, what is happening that where it's not just I'm a fan of music, I'm a fan of the person. Uh,
Well, that's the ultimate pursuit, right? So, making sure that they are attached to everything that the artist is doing and not just that one thing, right? Like how do you get people to connect with you as a person, right? And I think it's different for every artist because every person is different, and you have to understand what part of you are you willing to put out there, right? So if you look at an artist, and I'm talking about big artists because they're good examples, but like The Weeknd, right? Like he's such like a mysterious figure, right?
yeah.
But you do know his characters well. Like, he always has these different characters for his releases, and I feel like people then connect with that character. So who I say that to artists a lot of times of like, do you want to be the person that people are connecting with, or do you want like a persona,
Mm,
right? Like what is it that you want people to feel that connection with? Because there's some artists that are just very, open and honest and raw about who they are and what they're passionate about, what they're struggling with, and people really connect with that and feel like, "Oh my god, this person really gets me." Or there's this mystique, this character, right? And you create this subworld of for this character, and how
mm,
do you get people to connect into that world and create its own little culture around
mm.
it?
It's so interesting. I had a talk with Mac from Even, I guess a few podcasts ago, and I sort of in my own talk during the podcast, I was talking about um, how I act as a leader and a CEO, and for the podcast, I have this persona that I've developed, which is a very real part of me, which I am operating in right now, which is curiosity, it's generosity, it's like let's call it vulnerability, like
Mhm.
these things, so that I keep consistent during the podcast, and at no point of time has that been fake, but it's a part of my persona.
Mhm.
In work, let's say working with either my team or the startups, I'm ruthless, and people get very shocked because luckily the podcast has grown such large that every second call I jump on, people say, "Hey, I love you from the podcast," which is very nice for me. But
Right.
people are oftentimes very shocked that I'm dead honest and I will cut you with a knife in business. And people are so shocked and like, "Oh, is this Jacob from Python?" Yeah, is I actually have both sides. I actually
Right.
prefer to be ruthless,
Uh-huh.
because that's how I operate the best. That's where on behalf of, us building businesses, that's where I really perform best, and you really need to be a particular type of person to enjoy working with me,
Uh-huh.
and which I'm more like of the athlete persona,
Right.
but that doesn't show itself in the podcast, and for me, that's been I wouldn't say it's a very conscious choice, but it's just been a natural extension, like, me
Mhm.
as a podcast host is a true part of who I am, but it probably only occupies 20 or to 30% of the full scope of who I am.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Like, so that's also what you're saying, and maybe I have a very, very special way of approaching it. That's also what I'm hearing you saying, that you as an artist can also choose, like, this is a real part of me, but this is where I place myself in the branding.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that it can be different elements of yourself. And listen, I think everyone's like that. Like my husband jokes that I'm like work Jenna. He like hears me on a conference call. Like we all have that, right? We all have our career minds itself, and we all have our regular life selves. And I think we all have a piece of that. And then you have artists that then create this totally different identity. So we work with this artist named Henry Morris, who's kind of created this like total alter ego for himself, right? And he still goes by his own name, but he's kind of created this whole different world and mystique around himself. And it's like a piece of him. It's like comes from his own vision. But he created this really cool um mystique, that goes around his music and how people see him. And I think that that's a really fun way for people to connect, with an artist also. Like, it doesn't just have to be as simple as, like, different sides of you, but you can have a side of yourself that you can kind of, like, take from within and just, like, create
Mm,
this, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like aura,
yeah,
and so I encourage artists to be as creative and find that within themselves is like you don't just have to be like, when I talk to people about, well, what part of you do you want to share? You don't just have to be like, hey, I write songs and I like to go to the gym and cook, and this is what I'm going to talk about. Like, yeah, you could. That's fine too. Right. But like, maybe there's like a different element of like, where do you tap into when you write those songs? And what are
mm,
those songs about that how do you wanna have that conversation? Because sometimes the music is most of the time, that music's really incredibly personal, and you don't really wanna talk about it. So what is the way that you do feel comfortable talking about those really
Mm,
sensitive and deep emotional
mm.
topics?
Yeah, and obviously it needs to be something you can sustain as well. So, like, it needs to be real, but you don't need to feel like you're compromising your whole persona. Like, this is something
Yeah.
I can do for a while and still be real.
It
Uh,
has to be authentic.
yeah.
No matter what it is, it has to be authentic.
I think this is where it comes down to my thoughts about artistry, where I've missed this in the past, and I'm more convinced of it now, is the authenticity, but also the authenticity of talent, the authenticity of story, the authenticity of how you can present yourself. And in the past, I think I've had this assumption that I believe less so now, that you can, through hard work, make any ambitious artist become something special. And and maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but I make a parallel to entrepreneurship, which I know even better than artistry, is like when you talk with a founder that just has it,
Mhm.
it's never going to compare to the founder that doesn't have it and just really striving for it. Like, there is this element of a person
Yeah.
that is going to be the unfair advantage at all points of time. And then it's just about, okay, when you found this person, like, how can you make that even better? How can it sustain? How can you build
Mhm.
resilience, and how can you build a strategy around it? But this assumption that anyone, let's say, like, someone has something, can just magically turn into that, I actually think is, like, to some degree, a false assumption. It rarely happens. It
Mhm.
needs to be based on that very special base
Yeah.
that very few have. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, 100%, and it's 1,000% true, and I've seen it in my career 100 times where, like, you hear a song, you meet an artist, and you're like, "Oh, this is gonna be huge," right? Like, this is gonna be massive, and then sometimes it's also just about the stars aligning in the right way, and, is do people are people open to hearing that type of music in that moment, right? Like, and culturally, we go through different moments where different genres are popular, different sounds are popular, different visuals are taking off, and so I've, of course, seen a lot of artists that you would think would have been huge and just don't, and then you have those artists that it's like a spark of lightning and just, like, comes out of nowhere. So there is an element of the right place, the right time
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's also an entrepreneurship. Like, I think it's sadly, a lot of this is about just numbers and being one of the numbers. Like, it's, you've if you've been dealt some great cards and you have a good team, it increases the likeliness of you doing something significant, but it definitely does not, promise it
Guarantee
at
anything.
all.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part of this, is like, you might
Yep.
have all the elements, but it just was the stars just didn't align. And that's
Mhm.
how life is, and that's also the confusing thing about this, is, like, there's so many more elements than intent and team and capability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time.
No,
I
thank you. This is a really great conversation.
Yeah, I feel like I've a few of the things, a few of the questions about how I might have done in the past, I've got nuance from this, and, that's really helpful, and this is a podcast where a lot of entrepreneurs, innovators, and music industry professionals are listening, and it's less so in our understanding, like, us as directly, but it, like, understanding what we're actually selling at the end, if it's music technology, if it's infrastructure, whatever it is us actually understanding the dynamics of connecting with fans. That is just so essential. If you if you maybe could describe for me, like, the most important takeaway of understanding fan relationships with artists right now, how would you describe, like, what are the things that people need to know about the fan, the artist, and how to connect them in this current time and age?
Yeah, I think that there are people following you as an artist right now that want to be engaged. They want to be active. They want to be a part of what you're doing. And that's when data comes into play, right? And to knowing who is the most active on your audience base, even just as simple as looking in your DMs, looking at your comments, where are the repetitiveness of people who are constantly engaging, but don't be afraid to reach out to those kids and say, like, "Hey, please post about this. Please share this news. Like, what do you think of this? Like, create like a use them as a soundboard of like new music. This is like, what's your opinion? Get your friends to also participate. Like, there are people that want to engage and want to be a part of your success, and don't be afraid to utilize that tool that is very much available to you. There's I don't know, I think people get nervous to do that, and I think it's there and it's available to you, and know how to engage with those people and use it to your advantage because they want that. It's not taking advantage of somebody, they want to be involved with it.
Amazing, that's so practical, and actually, I haven't thought about it, and that's also the naivety of it, like, the lowest barrier of entry is, um, trying to find who's already there, already trying to engage, and just do that.
Yeah.
I think there's this, sometimes we overthink what
Mhm.
is
Or bug, yeah.
necessary in order to get to the next step. Um,
Yeah.
Jenna, thank you so much, it's been a pleasure
Thank
to have you.
you. This is wonderful.